When I was young, my uncle and his family had died in a fire to save me, leaving behind only their 3-year-old daughter. Thus, she became the most lovable member of our family. Later, she and I were involved in a car accident. As the blood and amniotic fluid mixed together, I clutched my husband's hand and begged him to save me and our children. However, he swatted my hand away and said impatiently, "Don't you realize Alice had hurt her bones?" My mother also scolded me. "Why are you still craving attention at a crucial moment like this? You are so cruel. Do you want Alice to be crippled for the rest of her life?" Just like that, I watched helplessly as they left with all the doctors, leaving me all alone. In the end, I died along with my adorable twin babies. When they heard the news, the ones who despised me most went crazy. I felt like I was about to die as my soul had already drifted from my body and floated over to my mother's side. Right now, she was sitting by Alice's hospital bed with a worried expression on her face. "You'll be all right, sweetheart. Don't worry about it." Alice's eyes were brimmed with tears as she asked, "Am I going to lose my legs? If that happens, I'll become a burden to you guys." When my husband heard her words, he immediately held her hands and said softly, "That's not going to happen, Alice. Look, Mom brought all the doctors here. You're going to be just fine." Alice nodded. Then she hesitated for a moment before asking, "What about Vanessa? Is she okay?" In that split second, my heart was filled with hope. If my mother remembered me, perhaps there was still time to save my children. However, my hope shattered in the next second. When my mother heard Alice's words, anger filled her eyes. Her voice was as cold as ice as she said, "You are hurt because Vanessa insisted on going to the mall. When we get back, I'll make sure to teach her a lesson." In that split second, a wave of bitterness swept through me as I watched my father stand by the side in silence. He opened his mouth and tried to say something. Nevertheless, he said nothing in the end. The doctors surrounded Alice's bed and did all sorts of examinations. In the end, they concluded that her injuries were nothing serious and merely just some scrapes. As my mother personally wrapped her wounds, my husband ruffled Alice's head and comforted her gently. "With Mom's skills, you don't need to worry about having any scars. Once Vanessa gives birth to the children, I'll divorce her and bring one of the babies for you, as we discussed before. That way, you won't have to go through the pain of giving birth yourself." My mind immediately became filled with white noise. Did he marry me just because he wanted me to get pregnant for the sake of Alice? Just because she didn't want to endure the pain? Am I nothing more than a mere baby-making tool? At that moment, my mother smiled and said, "I told you before that Vanessa should bear a child for Alice. It's fortunate that she's carrying twins. It's what she owed Alice in the first place." I felt a pang in my chest as I turned to look at my mother. There was no grief greater than despair. When Liam pursued me, he had been so attentive that I once believed he was my true love. Yet little did I know that he would whisper Alice's name on our wedding night. At that moment, I was furious, yet utterly powerless. My mother refused to let me divorce him and forced me to watch as my husband cared for another woman. Initially, I didn't want to get pregnant since I was afraid of the pain, plus my husband didn't love me either. Oddly, they suddenly showered me with affection one day. My mother coaxed me gently, saying that she wanted to become a grandmother. Just like that, I let my guard down and agreed to it. Only now did I know that she did all of those just for Alice. "Hey," my father called out with hesitation. "Shouldn't we check on Vanessa? She's still pregnant." The smile on my mother's face vanished the very next second. Then she dialed my number in annoyance. On the other hand, a nurse handed the phone to my dying body, and I could feel the rage in my mother's voice as she shouted, "Vanessa, I want you to apologize to Alice this instant." However, I couldn't respond. After all, I was already on the brink of death. The nurse, unable to contain her disapproval, sighed and said, "Dr. Miranda, Miss Tyson had a miscarriage. She is dying."